What's up guys, welcome back to Poor Man Mods. Today we're going to be doing the rear subframe bushings on my 1988 MK3 Supra. Now for this I partnered with CubeSpeed and StrongFlex. Now if you've seen any of my videos before, you know we've done a lot of videos with CubeSpeed and their shifters. Well, they're actually a dealer now for StrongFlex, and they hooked me up with a set of their front and rear subframe bushings. They sent me the red set, which is their softer bushing. They do have a yellow set, which is a little bit stiffer. More of a race application. This is more of a street car application, I guess you could say. So I do have the front and rear bushings from StrongFlex to install in this car, and this car is a 1988. It doesn't have many miles, but it's very old, and these cars, the bushings are very worn out, they're sloppy, they're not feeling too good, so this is really going to stiffen up the car and make it feel a lot more connected. And definitely want to give a big thanks to Cube and StrongFlex for helping me out with this. And now we're going to get to the install, which shouldn't be difficult at all. It should be an absolute breeze, no hiccups at all. The old bushings should just come right out, you know, just a little bit of heat from the torch. Definitely won't need a Sawzall or any serious tools. It's probably going to be one of the top 3 easiest mods I've ever done to this car. So let's get started.
So to start this, we're going to have to jack the car up and properly support it, pull off these wheels and tires, and then we're going to take off the brakes and properly support the calipers with some zippers or some bungers. And if you have an emergency brake cable, be sure to skip ahead to, well, Michael put the link in the description for the emergency brake section. So we'll see you guys there in a minute.
My plan here is I'm going to unbolt the shock from the knuckle here. So we'll be dropping the subframe and the shock will stay in the car. And I'm going to bungee the brake caliper to the shock. Alright, now that you've unbolted the shock, the brake caliper, the rotor, and the wheel, go and do the same thing on the other side. Alright, next we're going to do is disconnect the drive shaft. Now, it's kind of a matter of preference. You could detach a lot of things from the subframe if you wanted to remove weight and make it easier to handle. Like you could remove the diff, you could remove the axles. The diff is a good lifting point, so I don't think that's a good idea, but if your concern is weight, you could take things off. I'm not going to. The only thing I'm going to disconnect is a drive shaft because you have to, and the shocks. Everything else I'm going to try to lower with the subframe. We'll see if I die or not. But now you need a 14mm socket and wrench to undo all 4 bolts on the drive shaft.
How many of those do you need to actually drive with?
1.
Oh, okay.
If it's tightened enough. If it's past 13 foot-pounds of torque, you only need 1.
Okay.
I'd recommend at least 1.5.
So it's like one with a nut on the back and another one just like pushed through?
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
I have 4 on here just because I'm a little OCD.
Okay.
But yeah, you really only need like 1.5. Okay, depending on your setup, you might have to drop your exhaust. I did have to drop mine. Our drive shaft is now out of the way. And before we go hard and, you know, pull all the bolts out, there are 6 bolts that hold this in. There's 6 bushings. I'm going to see if I can break any or all of them loose first. So you will need a 19mm socket and a breaker bar. And there's 2 right here. And then 1 back here on each side. And we're going to see if we can break any of these loose.
What would you do if they were all loose?
Well, this one is not tight.
Like at all?
Like, well, it is a 3-foot breaker bar, but I gave no effort at all. Like, none. That probably means it's stripped out in the body. Alright, that nut wasn't bad. Not bad at all. Oh, I do see there's a bracket here held on by 2 more bolts on each side. So 6 main bolts through the bushings and then 2 more on each bracket right here. That one was snug, but still not bad. That one was not bad either. This one's tight. Alright, cool. All 6 of the main bolts are broken loose. Well, for some reason I'm missing one right here on this side, but these are 14 millimeters. I'm not sure why I'm missing it.
Like a whole subframe bolt or a bracket?
A bracket. It was probably the asshole that did the controller on bushings.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah. You can't trust that guy as far as you can throw him. Okay, so not sure if you can see. It's kind of hard to film this, being a one-man crew right now. There is a bolt right here on this bushing. This one is a stud with a nut. And the one back here near the diff is another nut. Since I'm underneath the car right now, you know, I don't want to lower the subframe with me under it because it's heavy. I'm going to remove just this bolt on each side. And this one is actually wet. It's like very greasy. I don't know. I guess that's the oil from inside the bushing, but obviously not good. So I'm going to remove the 2 bolts here underneath the car. Then I'll bring the jack in and support the diff. And then when it's supported, I'll drop the 4 nuts holding it in and see if this thing gracefully comes out or if it crashes and takes off a hand or a finger or my face, whatever. I cannot believe the condition of this one. It's brand new.
Good, you're reusing them.
I can't believe that. This one looks brand spanking new.
Would you rather them come out covered in rust?
No, I would not rather come out looking rusty, but that looks incredible. This one is not. This one is all greasy and slimy, and this one's brand new. So this bushing failed, and this bushing's been good. Because it's gone so smooth so far.
There's gotta be a problem.
There's gotta be a catch.
Why did the other one fall now?
I don't know, but let's see if it drops.
Good plan.
I don't want the camera to die. Come here, little buddy. It's still in the car. What? Oh!
Yeah, the driver's side's being a dick.
Watch out.
Yeah, I'm cool. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, there she goes. There she goes.
All you gotta do is kick it.
Yeah, problem solved.
Factory service manual, specific instruction.
One Freddy kick.
Donkey kick.
Donkey kick.
Now, if I'm really lucky, it'll come out.
I think oh, yeah, maybe not. I can get a glove. I will pull on this side.
I just need a Freddy. Just pulled her out, yeeted it. She's dirty. Wait a minute, did someone already reinforce this? There's welds right there.
Either that or she broke at some point. So
That's not factory. There's no way that's factory. What?
maybe she had a problem. And someone
Maybe.
just took her down and welded her up.
Since it is welded though, the diff,
Yeah.
I want to reinforce this area.
Just put some steel across here.
Yeah, I'm going to do something while it's out. So Tony, these bushings need a replacement. Yeah?
Man, these look like they're factory fresh, man. They're fine. What's wrong? They're supposed to do this.
Ooh. That one over there was the wet one. Let's investigate that one.
This one?
Yes.
I think it's okay, dude. These look like they've got another 100,000 miles on them easy.
For sure. If any of you guys are wondering, if you didn't see the video that I did a couple years ago, I did do all upgraded polyurethane bushings and all the control arms. So I did the whole energy suspension kit with these, so I'm not going to be doing anything with the arms. They are the way that I want them. We just need to do the subframe bushings and then possibly reinforce the diff area. And I'm not upgrading the rear sway bar, at least not yet. Okay? Alright, so last night, Tony and I actually made really good progress. We got the subframe out, and off camera we cleaned it. We sprayed it with Dawn dish soap and power washed it. It's looking pretty good, and we were able to get the 4 front bushings out. This process has actually been pretty quick and easy so far for us. I'd say we only have about 2 hours of time invested into getting the subframe out, cleaning it, and getting the 4 front bushings out. There's a couple different ways you can go about removing the bushings. I don't think there is a textbook way of doing it, but what we did, we torched the subframe, and that was able to kind of melt the outside of the bushing, and it fell out, and you can tap it out with a hammer. Some people say you don't need a torch at all, that you can just use brute force and get it out, and some people use the drill method, where you put a drill bit in the rubber and chew it up and it'll fall out, and then you can bang out the sleeve. I like fire, so I always go with the fire method, and you know, it always works for me. So we're gonna get the bushing out first with the fire and a hammer, and then once the bushing is out, you get the sleeve out. There's a sleeve in all the bushings that needs to come out. It's actually been pretty simple so far, and let's see if I can continue on the easy trend here with this one. Okay, once you get all the bushings out, you want to make sure that the inside of here is nice and smooth to make the installation of your new bushings a lot easier. I'm going to take my drill with a wire wheel and clean it up as best as I can, make it nice and smooth. Use whatever tools that you got, wire wheel, Scotch-Brite, you know, whatever. Definitely a big chunk of something right here still left on. I'm not sure if the wire wheel will get that off, but get these as clean and smooth as you can. Oh yeah. We got the cylinders cleaned up pretty good with a wire wheel. There are little spots where we had some lips that we had to file down to make it perfectly smooth. It's good to go now, we're ready to install the bushings, but I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm actually going to reinforce the subframe because these subframes are known to crack, and I do have a welded diff, and it's probably going to crack eventually. So while it's out, I'm going to reinforce it, but I'm not going to show you how to do that in this video. Once I get finished with that, I'll show you what it looks like reinforced, and then we'll get to installing the new bushings. Okay, we are back. After a couple days, I reinforced the subframe. I initially thought I was going to film it and make a video on it, but I kind of didn't feel like filming it. I wanted to focus more on the fabricating part of this, although I didn't do the best job. I wanted to focus on it rather than focus on filming, so sorry I didn't film it, but I'll still show you what I did. Basically what I did, I reinforced this area right here. I put 1/8 inch steel plates on the front, on the top, and on the back. I wanted to get a piece big enough to cover the whole front here, but I couldn't find a piece big enough, so I had to do 3 sections. That's why it's looking the way it is. Then I took 1 inch black steel pipe and connected the rear to the front of the subframe. Now this is pretty cheap. This pipe was $1 a foot at my local hardware store, and this plate was 10 or 20 bucks, I think. I got it at Home Depot. Their prices are a little higher, but if you go to a place that sells steel stock, you'll get it for a whole lot cheaper. So after I welded in the pipe and the plate, I went around and finished a couple of the factory welds. There were a couple areas where the welds kind of stopped, and then there was a gap between the 2 panels, and I finished that. Not sure if it really helped, but you know, I like to think it helped a little bit. So after I finished welding and everything, I sprayed it with the VHT epoxy black paint. And now we're on to installing the bushings, and I did a couple off camera to see how hard or easy it was going to be, and I'm actually blown away with how easy this has been. A lot of people have complained about how hard it is to remove the old bushings and install the new ones. This entire project for me has been entirely too easy. You don't need a special tool to install the new ones. You just lube them up with grease and they slide right in, and I will show you how to do that on this side. Alright, before you install the bushings, this is very important. There are two different sets of bushings for this. Two 11909 and two 11910. The 910s go in the back of the subframe. There's only two pairs. They're going to go at the back near the diff. And the two 11909s, there's four pairs and they're going to go in front. And the part with the dish is going to go on the bottom, and the flat part is going to go on top. Alright, the process for all these bushings is going to be exactly the same. I will show you how to do this one right here at the rear. And this kit does come with a whole lot of grease packets. I believe the rear set came with, I think, over 8 packets. So you have plenty of grease here. Use this, pretty liberally on the bushings and the sleeves. The first thing that I'm going to do is take some grease and I'm going to lubricate the inside of the hole here. Make sure you get it all covered so the bushing slides in real nice. And I want to coat this area right here on the bushing because this is where it's going to go inside of the subframe. You also want to lubricate inside where the sleeve is going to go. And over here on the side, I have a plastic bag that I can set it on, a nice clean surface instead of sitting it on, a dirty surface where it can pick up dirt and grit. You want these to be perfectly clean when you go to install them. And now this one is lubed up pretty good, and you can just plop it in just like that. It's beautiful. Lube up the sleeve. We're just going to get that started. We're not going to finish it just yet. And then take the lower bushing and lube that up too. Alright, that one's pretty good. Now you can just go from underneath. Not going to be able to see this, but it just slides right into place. Push the sleeve in as far as you can by hand, and then you can take a rubber mallet and hit it the rest of the way in. It's all the way in. Wipe off the extra grease. And there you go, you got your bushing installed. Now do this for the other 5 bushings. Alright, so here's a little update. I've got Moser helping me out with this. We have 2 jacks underneath the subframe. One on the pumpkin, and the other one across a 2x4 that we have going across the front of the subframe. So what we're trying to do now, we probably won't be able to film this because we're going to be 2 fat big bodies in the way of the camera. We're just going to try to slide that in and line it up with the stud hanging in. You can kind of see there's a stud right there. Right there. Gotta line that up with that back bushing, and we're going to try to lift it up. And this will probably be the most difficult part of the whole job.
Probably?
Yeah. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, so we got the subframe in. Still wasn't that difficult. I'm amazed with how easy this install was. I'm hoping it's as easy for you as it was for us, but we did have a jack in the back and a jack up front, and basically we just evenly lifted it up, and we got it in pretty hiccup free. About as easy as it could go. Here's a trick though. The bushings are a little bit thicker than OEM, so it's kind of hard to get the nuts and bolts in. What we did might not be, the factory procedure or whatever, but I was able to, on the passenger side, get the rear nut on the rear bushing first. Then I got the front bolt in with the plate on. So I'm sorry we couldn't film all this, but I got the passenger side bolted in, and then that allowed us to move the jacks and focus on the driver's side because it was a little crooked. So then we got the front bolt in, and then we got the rear nut on. The second nut that's up front is very hard to get on. The bushings are just really thick, and putting that plate on makes it really hard. So what we did, we got over here.
Oh, watch your head on the caliper.
You must forgive my ignorance. I don't know the thread pitch, but I have a castle nut here. I believe this is off of a ball joint. We were able to thread this on the stud up front and compress the bushing, and then take the plate and put it back on, and we could get the OEM nut on. For whatever reason, the design of that nut, there's a big dish in there, and it's just hard to get it started. There aren't enough threads sticking out. We also put a jack underneath that plate, pushing up on it to get a little bit more thread sticking out. So that was the trickiest part, just getting that last nut on, but other than that, it really wasn't that hard. So now we're going to torque everything, all 4 nuts and 2 bolts, get torqued to 133 foot-pounds, and we'll do that next. All right, so we're at the torquing stage. I think Moser's on the last bolt. How easy is this? That answers that.
I might have pooped.
Might have? Or you did?
There's a lot of poop.
Okay, so we have pretty much everything assembled on the car except for the brakes. I mean, once you get the subframe in, it's pretty much the same exact process, just reverse order as you remove the subframe. Pretty straightforward. I don't think I need to show you that. The only tricky part, actually the trickiest part of the whole process, was this plate right here. So I guess because the cone or dish in these bushings is tighter, if it's just a little bit smaller, it pulls this bracket back, which makes putting those bolts, it makes putting them in really difficult because the bracket, for us, was more towards the rear of the car. So actually what we needed to do, we had to loosen up the nut and bolt all the way. We didn't remove them, but they were just loose enough to where they were in there. And then I had a pry bar in here pushing forward on the bracket while we just got the bolts barely started and impacted them in. That's one way you could do it. You could make the hole a little bit bigger in the bracket, but it's definitely going to be a struggle there just because the bushings are so much tighter, it pulls this bracket back. Other than that, it's just like removing the subframe. Everything is just in the reverse order, brakes, drive shaft, all that. It's really not that hard. The hardest part of this entire process for us was this bracket, without a doubt. Other than that, pretty simple. And the bushings are greased up and looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. That one's actually, I clocked it perfectly so you can see StrongFlex. Awesome. Yeah. All right, we got the rear subframes installed and the car is all back together. I would say, honestly, with my personal experience, your experience is probably going to be different, but without reinforcing the subframe, this really wasn't that difficult. I was really expecting this to be one of the most difficult things I've ever done to the car, but honestly, the conditions that I ran into with my car, it's been garage kept for the past 5 or 6 years, but for the rest of its life before that, it wasn't. But I'd say it really was like a 5 or 6 out of 10 for difficulty. It really wasn't that bad. The only tricky part was that bracket in the front of the subframe, and then dropping it down and putting it back up was a little tricky, but if you have a friend and 2 floor jacks, you really shouldn't have a problem. Removing the subframe bushings, super easy. I don't know if I got lucky. I know I've heard people had bad experiences with removing theirs, but a little bit of torching and a couple whacks with the hammer got all 6 of mine out without a problem. I'd say total hours invested into just the subframe bushing job, probably 6 hours between dropping the subframe, removing them all, putting the new bushings in, power washing the subframe and putting it back in. I'd say 6 hours. I would love to give you guys a review of how the bushings feel right now, but the car won't start. I tried to start it and crank and crank and crank and crank and crank, and the thing won't start. Story of my life. So we're finished with the rear subframe bushings. I plan on doing the fronts, not tomorrow, but in the near future I plan on doing the fronts. So big thanks to CubeSpeed and StrongFlex for helping me out with this video. I'll have links to CubeSpeed and also StrongFlex in the description down below so you can check out their products. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
The car doesn't start.
I said that.